Hi guys, welcome back to LawNewz Network. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen in the Aaron Hernandez courtroom this afternoon. We are really hoping that we're going to actually be able to hear the arguments on motions with regards to the defense. 3 motions they filed over the weekend. A lot of it having to do with the street sweeper that we all want to hear from so badly. To talk about all of this, we've brought on Cathy Russon, who has been such an enormous help over the past week. She runs the website Court Chatter. She has been following these trials, all of these trials, Aaron Hernandez, the Curtis Reeves case. I know she's going to be following Warmachine, and we'll be talking to her over the course of these cases. Today, we're going to speak to her a little bit about Aaron Hernandez. Hi, Cathy. I think you might be still muted, Cathy. I can't hear you. Do we have a problem with sound? Can you hear me, Cathy? Why don't we see if we can make that connection, and while we do, we'll try to back up a little bit and talk about what's going on in Aaron Hernandez. We came in this morning, Monday morning, Judge Locke was ready to get started and listen to a number of witnesses. There were 2 investigators at the crime scene who were going to be heard from, and then there was also 2 people who actually were in the car where the victims were shot, and on top of that, we were hoping to hear from the street sweeper. Instead, the day started with 3 motions from the defense. Those 3 motions had to do with new evidence that was found over the weekend. The evidence that was found over the weekend allegedly had to do with a woman, a female with braids. Oh, I think I heard Cathy. Are you there, Cathy? Nope. And we will come back to Cathy if we can get her. In the meantime, before we talk about Aaron Hernandez, I do want to tell you about a special that we have coming on at 12:30 here on LawNewz Network. Our leader here, Dan Abrams, is going to come on with Rachel Stockman, and they have put together an amazing special for you to talk to you about everything that's happened over the weekend with President Trump, his allegations of wiretapping, and the travel ban that came out today, the executive order that came out today in response to an executive order that had come out some time ago and had been sort of knocked down by the courts. So Dan and Rachel have been working all morning on making sure that we get you all of the information, all of the legal analysis. They have some fabulous guests coming on for you today at 12:30, and they're going to be hosting an hour of coverage, diving deep into the travel ban, the wiretapping allegations, FISA court. What is the FISA court? It is a very, very unusual and very secretive court here in the United States that has been the subject of a lot of conversation, especially around the time of the whole Edward Snowden thing. So Dan and Rachel are going to break it down as only they can at 12:30, and then I am going to be on this afternoon with our new co-host here at LawNewz, Aaron Keller, and we're going to be talking about the Donald Trump wiretapping and the travel ban a little bit further, and then we're going to take you back as soon as we can to the Aaron Hernandez courtroom, hopefully hearing some motions on that. Finally, and the thing that I've been talking about for the end of last week and coming into this week, Warmachine. We're going to have 2 guests on this afternoon leading up to our Warmachine coverage. We're going to have a defense attorney, a criminal defense attorney, and we're going to be talking to a psychologist to talk to us about some of the psychological issues that we're going to hear about over the coming week. The testimony in this case is going to have a lot to do with sexual abuse, fantasy lives, all of these things, and to have a psychologist break it down for us on both the defense side, what the defense is going to be arguing and how valid those arguments are, and on the prosecution side to talk about what Chrissy Mack, the victim of this attack, may be thinking and may have to say. All of those things are going to be really important, and so we're going to hear from a psychologist about that later on this afternoon. I think Anthony might have, no, we still don't have Skype contact with Cathy Russo. As soon as we do, we're going to bring her in because she truly is one of the experts on watching trials. She knows the details. She's been doing this long enough that she really can see some things that a lot of us aren't seeing and aren't hearing, and so it's really wonderful to have the benefit of her experience. We will be bringing her in as soon as we can. In the meantime, though, I am going to take you back to the clips that we have of the Aaron Hernandez openings because they do, while you may have seen them before, it looks like, Anthony, do we have Cathy? Oh, it looks like we do have Cathy. Let's try that again and see if we can't get her here live via Skype. If we can, we'll get into Warmachine and even perhaps the Curtis Reeves things with her.
Hello?
Oh, Cathy, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We did it! Yes!
How are you?
I'm good now.
Now, what do you think? I know from following on your website that you've been watching this morning and you were paying attention to these arguments on motions that started off our day in Aaron Hernandez. What do you think of the defense's motions, and what do you think of their chances?
Man, I was trying to follow that. That was a little crazy, right?
Oh, it was definitely unexpected.
Well, it was definitely what we expect from any defense team ran by Jose Baez.
That's right.
So, okay, the street sweeper, that's what he talked about in his opening statement, and now it's come up again.
Right.
Well, he claims that they had breakfast with the street sweeper last week, and a bombshell was laid on them that the street sweeper was directed by the Boston police to dump the hopper of the street sweeper, and also was threatened to not speak about it or to speak about the interaction with them, something like that.
Right.
And yet they say that the only thing they've ever heard from the state on this case about the street sweeper was that they had contacted him and nothing relevant had ever came from it. And that's all the defense had ever known about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, if what they're saying today is true, it is definitely a problem. It's a problem for the prosecution, and it certainly puts a wrench in trying this case, because this is evidence that the defense is certainly entitled to.
Right. So, of course, trial watchers, which is my business,
right,
don't want to believe anything that comes from the Baez defense. So they're all very leery of this, and I'm waiting for the street sweeper's testimony. We're all waiting for that, and we should be able to hear that today.
I hope so. I mean, I think this street sweeper's testimony is going to be absolutely fascinating, because one of the things, and I have to back up and say, Judge Locke, who's the judge presiding over this case, so far I have been so impressed by Judge Locke. What have you been thinking of him?
Oh, agree. We've seen him in all the pretrial hearings, and very impressed with him. He knows how to keep order in his court.
Yes.
He's not taking any flack. And I heard you say earlier this morning, and I completely agree, he's a jury's kind of judge.
Yes.
He's taking care of his jury, and he's worried about his jury's time. He doesn't want to waste it.
Yeah, and that's so important. We watch these trials, and you watch them religiously, and we sometimes forget that jurors give up their lives to be there. And I love when judges respect the jury, because we should respect jurors. It's a major obligation. It's one of our duties as citizens. And I love the way that Judge Locke was like letting them go home rather than have them wait around in the jury room. Not all judges would do that. But I do think one of the things that he said this morning that was funny and interesting is I think he was marveling, as was I, that the street sweeper would see dead bodies and just keep on sweeping the streets. Did you hear that part?
That's what they're instructed to do, apparently.
Which is just, I'm dying to hear from the street sweeper, because apparently they're told that no matter what you see, no matter what happens, you just keep on doing your job, and that's what this street sweeper apparently did. I
would assume that he would call 911 or something if he really saw dead bodies. And I guess that the protocol is we don't stop this big machine.
Right.
I would think that if he saw, somebody on fire, he would stop to put them out. I don't know. So yes, that was fascinating that is apparently what the protocol is. I don't know. Everybody's waiting to hear from this guy.
Well, right. And the prosecutor, in response to this allegation that the street sweeper is going to say that the police told him to keep his mouth shut, the prosecutor's sort of aside comment was that perhaps that these were some sort of security guards and not police officers. The thing that often happens in situations like this, and I could see the possibility of it happening here, is a hearing within the trial, a trial within the trial, because now suddenly they could be calling other investigators, police who spoke to the street sweeper, and it could really turn into something that could delay this case more than just the hours that we've seen so far today. What do you think?
We often see cases get off into the weeds, as we like to say, when something like this happens, and it really is up to the judge how far off into the weeds it gets. And we see judges, and I'm not going to name any names, we have seen some high-profile trials where a judge will definitely let it go way too far and let it go on a long time, and juries will not, their time is definitely wasted with this kind of thing. Judge Locke is not that kind of judge.
Right.
He's going to get business done and get it done quickly.
Yeah, I think that what he's going to have to do is sort of, as you said, not go into the weeds, rein it in, and get things going again. I think part of the problem for today was the unavailability of the witnesses that have to answer some of these questions. It's kind of unfortunate because it looked like today was going to be a very interesting day. Not only were we going to hear from two of the people who processed the scene, but we also were going to hear from two of the people who were in the car with the victims. What do you think that we're going to hear from them, and how do you think it will impact the case?
Right. So remember, there was three people in the back seat.
Right.
And two of them ran from the scene as soon as the gunfire started, and the one in the middle back seat got hit in the arm,
right.
and he was wounded, and he stayed, and he's the one that was interviewed at the hospital. And we are going to hear from them. We heard from them at a pretrial hearing, and Baez really tore them apart.
Right.
They can't positively ID. Eyewitness testimony is a mess. And so positively IDing Hernandez as the shooter is a real problem in this trial. This trial is not open and shut as many people believe that it is.
I agree with you 100%, Cathy. I mean, I think that the other murder case against Aaron Hernandez seemed to be so much more open and shut that it sort of bled into this one. But here, I mean, there is a lot to give a juror reasonable doubt so far, don't you think?
Absolutely. Well, this jury doesn't really know what, we're just barely starting this case. So, but yes, I mean, they're going to get into this, and I keep telling my chat room, they keep thinking, oh, this case is just so, it's over before it ever started.
Right.
And I keep saying, you guys need to watch this closely, because if you're truly interested in how our justice system works and in evidence and in a case, and I know he's already been convicted and he's serving life, this is one to watch. This is very interesting because they don't have all the evidence on Hernandez.
That's right.
And this case could find a not guilty at the end.
That's right. I think that it's, there's absolutely plenty of room for reasonable doubt in what we've seen so far and what we can expect to see. I mean, we know there's no forensics. We know that there's no eyewitness that's really reliable, and then Alexander Bradley is really where this case lies, and he's not going to be the most ideal witness for the prosecution. You think Baez does his cross-examination?
Oh, I would think so.
Yeah,
I would waiting for that.
I would love to be the person doing his cross-examination. It would be one of those that's fun because there's just a lot to play with there. But as we've seen, he's not the only key witness. I was saying on one of the chat rooms today that I am looking forward to the street sweeper as much almost as I'm looking forward to Baez, because this testimony from the street sweeper could be make or break for large parts of the defense. If the street sweeper tells the jury that the police told that him to keep his mouth shut, that has a huge impact on the defense in this case.
This seems like a big mess.
Yeah.
I mean, if this really is it, and is this really slapping the prosecution inside the face that they really had no idea, or did they really think the defense wasn't going to find out? I mean, this is what I want to know. I mean, I want to see this guy now more than anyone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, the defense attorney that we heard most from this morning was Sullivan, and it's my understanding, and you probably know more about him than I do, but it's my understanding that Sullivan is a Harvard professor, law professor. Do you have any more background on Attorney Sullivan?
Well, I know that he's been brought in. He's right. He is a Harvard law professor, and I believe that he is also, I need to go back and look at my notes. I believe he is also, oh my gosh.
I think he has some, I think he does quite a bit of public policy stuff for criminal defendants.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. That's the wording I was looking for. So he's the book nerd guy, okay? He's got all of the, so smart, smart. And he's got all the research on this, all the law research on this. Looks like he's probably going to be doing the questioning of the street sweeper.
Yeah, and that will be it will be interesting to see if Baez can keep a seat and let co-counsel do that. Now, with Aaron Hernandez sort of in the wings, I want to talk about the other two cases that we have been talking about. I want to go back in time a little bit and just briefly talk about Curtis Reeves, because I know that you followed those long closings on Friday, and I haven't had the chance to talk to you about them. What did you think?
Well, painfully long on the defense. Look, the judge already said, I don't need a day's worth of closing arguments, and she got a day's worth of closing arguments. So the defense went too far, too long. The judge knew the case inside and out. In my opinion, that I've been saying all along, is she already knows that she's going to send this case to trial. So she didn't need all of that. I do understand they need to put a lot of things on the record, but it was too much. But you know, it was exactly what we expected from the defense. I don't think I heard anything that was too shocking, except I do think that's the first time I heard the defense say that Chad Olson was not texting with his daughter or with the daughter's babysitter, but that he was on Facebook. That's the first time I heard that.
I agree with that. I was trying to grasp back in my memory about evidence to support that, because, you know, one of the things that I always have to remind myself of when there's long trials or long hearings like this is that what the attorneys say isn't evidence. What is actually in evidence is what the judge has to ultimately rely upon. So there has to have been some testimony or some piece of document that at least supports the allegation that he was on Facebook and not texting with his daughter. I don't know why that would make any huge difference ultimately, and whether or not Reeves's behavior was reasonable. But I did think that was the only thing that sort of struck me. And it was a long closing. I had an attorney, Philip Holloway, who I know is a big fan of yours, and he was on with us Friday, and he said that he's had these entire hearings last as long as the defense is closing in Reeves on Friday. So it was outrageously long.
Right. So yeah, a couple things. First of all, Bill is great, and he's also just a regular in our chat room, and he's a regular guy, and we absolutely love him. So right. 2 weeks for a stand your ground hearing, and long days. I mean, this could have been 3 weeks. With a lot of judges, it could have been 3 weeks. It was too long. But going back to him being on Facebook, this is what we know from a pretrial motion filed by the defense when they wanted to look at Chad Olson's phone records and text records. They wanted to examine them even in camera, even in private in the judge's chambers, was that they had reason to believe he wasn't texting with his daughter or with the babysitter, and that the texts were sexual in nature. That was in one of the motions, and I was waiting for that bombshell of some sort to come out.
Right.
Now, it never did come out. But presumably the judge knows something and the attorneys know something, and then all of a sudden he said he was on Facebook. What does that have to do with anything? I'm assuming the defense is saying that already put him kind of on edge, that maybe he was doing something nefarious with his wife right next to him. And when Curtis Reeves says, shut down your phone, then he's all of a sudden already on edge and caught, and,
right.
Maybe something like that. So, that's kind of an aside for me, but that is the first time I'd heard that. Other than that, with the closings, it was what we expected from the defense. He's old, he's frail, he was afraid, he was scared. There's nothing in his past to show that he's just an easy trigger finger,
right,
and would just shoot. But it was long-winded.
Oh my gosh. It certainly was. Now we know that the judge has indicated that she's probably going to give a ruling by Friday. You think we'll get it sooner?
Maybe. She said Friday by 3 p.m. What does that mean? I don't know. And that she'll send it to the attorneys first, then she'll send it to the court PIO. So maybe she did say, she's like, I have court all week. I have things I'm doing.
Oh, of
so
course.
I'll be doing this on my own time. So it could be Friday.
Yeah, I'm sure that she's happy to get a little break from that case and move on to the next one, but we'll be even happier when the order's out of her hands. Though, as I've said, and I think you and I discussed this before, I think we can probably expect an appeal no matter what the ruling is.
there'll be an appeal on one side or the other, and he'll still be not in jail, which doesn't make anyone happy, I think.
Right, right. Yeah, he's in house arrest. I think he's allowed to leave the house for doctors, church, and grocery store, and otherwise is on house arrest.
Right.
Now, the last thing that I want to talk to you about before we let you go is the Warmachine trial. And I know that this is one that, we just started sort of looking into. I know that's one that's just started getting on your radar. Have you had the chance to look into it and get a sense of what it is that we're going to be dealing with later on this afternoon?
I've just started talking to the trial watchers about this. It's not on their radar at all because we really haven't seen, usually we see pretrial hearings and that gets people kind of, ready to see this, and
Right.
we haven't seen anything coming from this, or at least not a lot. So I've been talking about this case. This case is going to be more fascinating than what people think it's going to be. So I'm so glad that you guys are covering this and that we're going to have cameras in this courtroom. One fascinating fact, he legally changes his name to Warmachine. And now I think he's probably regretting that. Because is he going to be called Warmachine in the courtroom?
Oh, for sure. I mean, listen, if I'm the prosecutor and and the prosecutor in this case, her name's Jacqueline Bluth. She is known to be a tough prosecutor. If I'm her, there is no way I'm calling him by his birth given name. He is going to be Warmachine to me every single day.
I mean, the girlfriend is a adult industry star. Shall we say?
Yes.
He walks in on her in bed with another man. He beats the tar out of him. That guy leaves. He beats the tar out of her. He sexually assaults her. This case is horrible. We see images of her, and her face is beat to a pulp.
Yeah.
It is just horrid. He's an MMA fighter. We see those MMA fights. You can go on YouTube and see his fights. And he did that to her. This case, then it gets worse. You guys have been talking about this. The judge just ruled that it can come in about her that supposedly she's had these, fantasies, these sexual fantasies, these rape fantasies, like role playing or whatever.
Right.
So now she's going to be put on trial. The victim will be put on trial. So this case will be fascinating. It'll be fascinating to follow, watch. It'll also be probably heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's difficult for this judge, and the judge is also a female who's been on the bench for many, many years. And one of the things that I think is important for everyone to understand is she has a tough ruling there, because really when it comes down to relevance and arguments about relevance, does the probative value, does it prove something, outweigh the prejudicial value? And here there's an argument to be made that if his claim is this was somehow agreed upon or consensual behavior, then it certainly would be probative if they've done this before, or if she has actually said that this is something that she's interested in. Now, I agree with you 100%, Cathy, that you don't consent to have your liver lacerated, you don't consent to have your eye blown out, you don't consent to lose your teeth. But this judge had a tough ruling to make, and I think under the law, she probably leaned the right way, but it's going to make for a very difficult trial for the victim, who, by the way, has been enormously strong throughout all of the pretrial hearings. Have you gone back and looked at any of the coverage of those?
I haven't seen a lot of it, no.
There's been, I mean, she's been there, she was testified. I anticipate that she'll testify obviously at trial as well. But Warmachine's going to be quite a character. We've seen him apparently blowing kisses at the prosecutor during some of these hearings.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think, Cathy, that we have Hernandez live back in the courtroom, and I am dying to see the street sweeper. So I'm going to let you go, and we will have you back on later on this week.
Okay.
Thanks, Cathy. All right, guys, we're going to take you back to the courtroom where apparently they're back in session, and hopefully we're going to hear a little bit more on these motions and what type of evidence the street sweeper knew or did not know. So we'll take you back there, and we'll be back for Dan's coverage of the Donald Trump wiretapping information in just a bit.